Alliance leader Mmusi Maimane joins me in studio to discuss the party's economic and labour policies. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. You've said as the DA that you believe you can achieve higher economic growth than our current 1.2, 1.3% that it's hovering at. One of these ways is by looking at what you call suffocating policies. Take us through this.
Thank you very much. First of all, I think the number one issue in South Africa should always be growth. Without a growing economy, it's impossible to reach the objectives of creating work for our people and ensuring that actually we create an economy that more South Africans are included. And for us, key interventions speak to the fact that we must deconcentrate our economy. So in other words, where there are all of these state-owned enterprises which act as monopolies are simply not helpful. We think competition is the way. We think the second most crucial thing is that we must focus on cities, because cities give us an opportunity to grow. If Johannesburg is growing at a higher level, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay, eThekwini, Cape Town, when they're growing, they're able to stimulate micro-enterprise and allow more people to create work. And then lastly, we must deal with the development of labor, both on the supply side, which is about how do we ensure that people are developed, they're capable, they're employable, and then equally so, it's easier to employ people. So the labor relations framework must be adjusted to a point at which we can easily absorb more people to come into the workspace and ensure that productivity is linked likewise.
On that labour issue, the DA resolved, among other things, changes to the Labour Relations Act, and then say you also want to be able to allow people to opt out of the minimum wage. So if they want to get paid less than 3,500 Rand a month, they can opt out of this. NUMSA says that this is disgusting and that you're trying to entrench poverty patterns that we see in South Africa today.
That's complete nonsense by NUMSA. First of all, the highest level of inequalities in South Africa is between those who have a job and those who don't have a job. So why are we telling South Africans that, no, it's better for you to stay at home? Already, Treasury's report has already indicated the fact that we are facing up to a jobs bloodbath as soon as the legislation has been passed around minimum wage. So you are going to increase more people who end up on the streets without work. We're not saying, I want more people to be paid more. Of course, that objective must be achieved. But ultimately, I want for someone who says, it is better for me to go to work to be able to have the option to negotiate that over a shortened period of time, concise, so that they can learn the skills. If we are going to roll out, especially for young people, we have a program that says we can get 78,000 young people into the workspace as interns so that they can learn the dignity of working, we can develop their skills, and ultimately ensure that they have an opportunity to move up the ladder. So why can't we give those young people an opportunity? And then lastly, when you look at the state and the state programs, there are already exemptions being put on the table. So for example, if someone wants to do an expanded public works job, they're not requiring minimum wage because no one can afford that. So I think we mustn't focus on that argument. The only question that must be on the table is how do we ensure more people end up in the workspace? That's why I'm proud to say, without the introduction of minimum wage, all 75% of the new jobs that have been created in South Africa have been in DA-led governments, primarily because we create a capable state, ensure that more people are able to be freed up to employ people, export products, and ensure that micro-enterprise can thrive.
Before we carry on, that statistic, especially in the Western Cape, has been argued against because they're saying it's a private company that came in there, and it's not so much to do with the DA-led government, but the private sector that is there. What's your response?
It's an important distinction, because I fundamentally believe that no government should be creating jobs. Once we get into the space where we say governments are the only ones who create work, we're going to struggle. What we're saying is that companies are going to invest in places where there's a capable state, there's no corruption, there are infrastructural investments that are put in there like water, energy, to make sure that those businesses can come on board. And therefore, the reason why that same company can come into the Western Cape to invest is because all of those things are there. They could have chosen anywhere else. I've just come back from Limpopo, which is one of the provinces that have got the highest level of unemployment in the country. You can recognize that it's primarily because there's no infrastructure and an incapable state. Let us build capable governments who are not creating the jobs but freeing up the private sector to be able to create work.
One of the other ways that you as the DA has proposed in your economic policy documents is to bring in skilled foreign workers, because you say you believe they can create 8 unskilled jobs for every foreign skilled worker that comes in. How do you then balance that with your views, particularly in Johannesburg, around unskilled and undocumented foreign workers who are here?
Migration is a natural part of any economic growth. It's a fundamental issue. But you can't just have undocumented or unregistered migration. You need it skilled. Every country in the world does this. The reason why skill is important is that actually the greatest asset anyone can have is know-how and the transfer of skills. Now in South Africa, we have skills in certain sectors, but we've got a deficit in other sectors. And what we're saying as the DA is that let's make sure we can get people, some of them domestic, some of them international, who can bring that particular skill so that we end up with a labor force that is skilled, that is innovative, able to create work. And ultimately, the further argument is that actually when we even begin to stimulate industries like tourism, we know very clearly that the more people who are landing on our shores create work here, they are able to create in the value chain more jobs. Our argument is simply this. Don't ask the government to be the one who are the central employer. Let us create all conducive environment that the private sector, through micro-enterprise, can create more work.
The DA, and you've spoken about this, there's a lot of contestation of ideas sometimes that spills over into the public domain. Let's focus on the economic policies of that. There's obviously different ideas of how the economic policies of the DA should be. There's more conservative policies. They're saying there should be less regulation, and then also saying that big growth will kind of deal with the imbalances of the past. And then there's also a more inclusive multi-stakeholder approach that you've spoken about. So how do you debate this, and what ideas win at the economic policy level, especially as you've said, there's a new policy level coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I'm proud of in the DA, is that actually there's healthy debate. It's a sign of a mature organization that can look at questions. What guides decisions is on the basis of our values. We talk about freedom, fairness, opportunity, and diversity. Now, when you look at those values, we recognize explicitly that South Africa is unequal. It's unequal on the basis of race. And any economic policy must seek out the best ways to not only address historical injustices, but focus on the future. Be able to create an environment upon which those who are left out the economy can be included. That's the first. But furthermore than that, we're saying, let's create an equality of opportunity. You can't create an equality of outcomes, but let's create an equality of opportunity for young people, for those who are left out as women, for those South Africans who live in rural communities who can't find workspaces. How do you create that equality so they can come in, find opportunity in the workspace? And that ultimately it's about progressively saying our work environments must be ones that are diverse and are future focused. So if we look at our policy, there's a lot that focuses on the development of labor. There's a lot that looks at how do we do redress in a meaningful manner, not one that benefits a few who are connected at the top, but broadly benefits everybody. I want every South African to have a stake in the economy. So that's not debated in the DA. The questions of how and what policies you then put on the question should always be debated. That's a healthy organization. But the fundamental principles are on our values and ensuring that more people are included.
Mmusi Maimane, thanks so much for your time, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, talking us through the economic and labor policies. Nompumelelo, it's over to you.